Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight, we journey into the hidden chambers of ancient Egypt, where pharaohs guarded forbidden secrets of sleep and dreams. These were not simple bedtime stories, but rituals whispered in darkness, believed to open gates between this world and the next. As always, let me know where in the world you're listening from. Get comfortable, breathe deeply, and let us begin. In the depths of the Egyptian desert, beneath layers of stone and sand, a burial chamber was opened. Egypt has yielded countless treasures to explorers, yet this chamber held something different. When archaeologists brushed away the dust, they did not uncover glittering jewels or weapons of war. Instead, they found carvings and scrolls filled with instructions. These were not commands for armies or records of taxes. They were words about sleep. They described rituals to prepare the body, chants to steady the spirit, and charms to guard the soul. Imagine the scene. Oil lamps flicker against walls painted with constellations. The air is thick with the sweetness of myrrh and frankincense. At the center of the chamber rests a bed of gold and ebony shaped like a lion crouching in silence. Upon this bed, the pharaoh does not simply lie down to rest. He begins a nightly passage. For the pharaoh, sleep was not a private act. It was a moment when the fate of Egypt itself hung in the balance. To sleep unprotected was to risk losing the soul in the dark corridors of the underworld. To dream without guidance was to invite chaos into the waking world. This is why priests guarded the pharaoh's slumber with spells, incantations, and sacred objects placed carefully around his chamber. Close your eyes and picture it. A silence broken only by the soft breath of attendants. Shadows stretching across carved walls where gods with animal heads watch from the stone. The pharaoh drifts into sleep while his spirit prepares to cross into unseen realms. To the Egyptians, this nightly act was not simple rest. It was a ritual. It was a form of power. And perhaps it was a secret too dangerous for ordinary people to know. What did the rulers of ancient Egypt understand about sleep? That we no longer grasp today. Tonight, we will explore their hidden rituals, their sacred chambers, and the dreams they believed could shape empires. Stay with me as we unlock the forbidden sleep secrets of the pharaohs. To understand why sleep mattered so deeply to the ancient Egyptians, we must first see the world through their eyes. Sleep was not a pause in life. It was a passage. Each night, they believed, the soul slipped beyond the body, traveling through invisible gates where it might meet gods, ancestors, or lurking spirits. In this twilight state, protection was essential. Without it, one might not return with the sunrise. For pharaohs, sleep was more than rest. It was a sacred duty. The ruler of Egypt embodied balance and cosmic order. His life and his dreams were tied to the prosperity of the land. If he dreamed well, Egypt flourished. If his soul was threatened in the night, chaos could spread across the kingdom. This is why entire priestly orders were dedicated not only to waking rituals, but to guarding the ruler's slumber. The Egyptians called sleep the little death. It was seen as a rehearsal for eternity. Each night, one lay down on a mat or a gilded bed and surrendered to darkness, knowing that the soul might wander. Each morning, waking was like rebirth. In this rhythm, they saw the patterns of the cosmos, the rising and setting of the sun, the flooding and retreat of the Nile, the endless cycle of life and death. Consider the design of their sleeping spaces. The Pharaoh's chamber was aligned with stars, carved with protective images, and filled with offerings. But even humble households treated sleep as sacred. A mother might place a scarab amulet under her child's pillow. A farmer might whisper a prayer before closing his eyes, hoping that the gods would grant a safe passage through the night. Dreams were not idle fantasies. They were messages. A vision of a falcon might signal divine favor. A nightmare of serpents might be taken as a warning. Pharaohs kept scribes and priests trained to read these signs, for a dream could guide political decisions, military campaigns, or the founding of temples. To ignore the messages of sleep was to risk defying the gods themselves. Imagine a night in Thebes. The city grows quiet. Torches burn low in the courtyards. In the palace, servants place bowls of lotus petals at the corners of the pharaoh's bed. Outside, ordinary families lie on woven mats beneath reed roofs, clutching small charms to keep spirits away. Across the land, from the humblest hut to the grandest palace, Egypt breathes in unison as it drifts into sleep. And so, as we begin this story, picture yourself as one of them. You are lying on a carved wooden bed. Around you, amulets glimmer faintly in the lamplight. The murmur of protective prayers drifts through the chamber. Your eyes close. Your body rests. But your soul prepares to journey. For in the night, the Egyptians believed, the barrier between mortal and divine grew thinner than a veil of linen. When the sun sank beyond the western horizon, the people of Egypt believed their king's body followed the same cosmic path. Just as the sun descended into the underworld, only to rise again, so too did the pharaoh close his eyes, enter the realm of night, and await rebirth at dawn. But unlike his subjects, his journey into sleep was not left to chance. It was choreographed, protected, and wrapped in ritual. The pharaoh's bedchamber was more than a room. It was a stage on which nightly rites of power unfolded. Walls were carved with protective figures, falcons stretching their wings, eyes of Horus staring out into eternity, and hieroglyphs that promised safe passage to the dream world. The chamber itself was often aligned with celestial bodies. Archaeologists studying the ruins of temples and palaces have noted that doorways and windows channeled the light of particular stars, guiding the ruler's soul as he slipped into slumber. At the center of this chamber stood the bed, not a simple piece of furniture, but a throne of rest fashioned from the rarest materials the kingdom could summon. Gold leaf shimmered on its frame. Ebony, imported from distant lands, provided strength. The legs of the bed might be carved into the shape of lions. guardians of strength, or bulls, symbols of royal might. At its head rested the curved headrest, a design unique to Egypt. Though it might appear uncomfortable to modern eyes, this crescent-shaped support cradled the pharaoh's neck, keeping his head elevated and safe. The head, after all, was sacred. It was the seat of dreams, the vessel of the Ka, or life force. To guard it was to guard the very essence of the king. No pharaoh entered this chamber alone. The sleep priests, attendants trained in sacred arts, prepared the space each evening. They carried censers filled with incense, walking slowly around the bed, tracing invisible circles of protection in the air. The smoke rose, curling like ethereal serpents toward the ceiling, where painted stars glimmered in lamplight. One priest recited spells from the Book of Protection, words intended to bar evil spirits from entering the chamber. Another placed amulets at the four corners of the bed, a scarab at the head, symbol of rebirth, an ankh at the foot, promising life renewed. Images of falcons and jackals carved in miniature were positioned to guard the pharaoh's spirit as it wandered. Now, imagine the moment. The chamber is quiet. The city beyond the palace walls has fallen into shadow. Servants extinguish torches in the corridors. Only this room remains aglow, pulsing with golden lamplight. The pharaoh, draped in linen robes, enters. He reclines on his bed, his head settling onto the curved rest. Around him, attendants whisper final prayers, their voices low and steady, like a chant rising and falling with the rhythm of breath. It is here, in this silence, that the forbidden nature of these rituals emerges. For the Egyptians, sleep was not merely unconsciousness. It was a journey into realms where unseen beings lurked. The pharaoh was believed to leave his body, his soul traveling across landscapes of shadow, where gods and demons mingled. To protect this voyage, the chamber became a fortress. Every surface, every object, every whisper carried symbolic weight. The golden bed was not just comfort, it was a shield. The incense was not just fragrance, it was a barrier. The headrest was not just furniture, it was a sacred tool. Consider the layering of senses in this space. The smell of resin and lotus oil. The warmth of stone cooled by the desert night. The dim flicker of lamps casting long, trembling shadows. The faint hum of priests repeating protective verses. All of this conspired to guide the pharaoh gently yet powerfully into the world of sleep. Fictional accounts woven from inscriptions suggest that some pharaohs may have experienced dreams described as journeys among the stars. A carving from a temple wall tells of Ramesses Khut dreaming that the falcon-headed Horus carried him across the night sky, placing him among the constellations. Whether literal or metaphorical, such stories reveal the importance of sleep as a bridge between earth and heaven. At times, the chamber itself was imagined as a vessel. The bed became the sun bark, the ship that carried the sun god Ra through the underworld each night. As the pharaoh lay down, he symbolically joined this cosmic voyage. In dreams, he might battle Apophis, the serpent of chaos, just as Ra did. And when he awoke at dawn, it was as if he too had triumphed, returning with the light of day. Yet this privilege was not without danger. Stories tell of pharaohs who feared restless nights, for a disturbed sleep could signal weakness or impending doom. This is why the rituals were precise. A missed charm, a forgotten prayer, even a faltering chant could be seen as an opening through which malevolent forces might creep. The priests took their duties seriously. Each night was a defense against chaos. Each dream was a potential prophecy. Let us pause and visualize the chamber once more. The pharaoh's eyes close, his breathing slows. The gold of the bed glimmers faintly, reflecting the last movements of the priests. The smoke of incense hangs in the air, forming slow spirals. The amulets lie in silence, their power unseen but believed. Outside, the desert wind whispers against stone walls. Inside, time seems suspended. This is the sacred bedchamber. It is not a place of sleep alone, but a gateway to the unknown. As we continue deeper into this exploration, remember that these rituals were not recorded for the common people. They were reserved for royalty. They were whispered, guarded, and in some cases concealed. They were forbidden secrets, hidden in tombs and sealed in scrolls, waiting millennia to be uncovered. And now, as you hear them retold, you too are entering that chamber, if only in imagination. In ancient Egypt, dreams were never taken lightly. To us, they may seem like fleeting shadows of thought, strange images formed by the resting mind. But to the Egyptians, dreams were communications. They were letters from gods, warnings from spirits, or glimpses into futures not yet formed. A dream could reassure a pharaoh of divine favor. It could also foretell calamity for the kingdom. Because of this, dreams became a domain of ritual, scholarship, and even politics. Pharaohs and nobles kept trained priests close at hand, men whose duty was to interpret the visions of the night. In pottery discovered near Thebes and in fragments preserved in museum collections today, we find evidence of dream books. These texts listed symbols and their meanings. A dream of drinking cool water might be read as a promise of prosperity. A dream of fire might be taken as a warning of danger. To dream of lions could suggest power and victory, while dreaming of serpents might signal betrayal. Imagine then the pharaoh waking at dawn, his eyes still heavy, recounting a vivid dream to his attendants. A priest would sit nearby, reed pen ready, carefully writing every detail on fresh papyrus. He would note the symbols, the colors, the feelings, and then compare them to established lore. Yet interpretation was not mechanical. It required skill, intuition, and a careful understanding of the dreamer's role in the cosmic order. Some temples were dedicated almost entirely to dreams. These were known as dream temples or incubation sites. In such places, pilgrims might travel for days, seeking visions that could heal sickness or answer pressing questions. At Abydos, at Memphis, and later, even in Greek-influenced centers like the Serapeum, worshippers would lie down in darkened halls, surrounded by sacred imagery. Priests guided them with chants and potions, encouraging them to fall asleep within the temple walls. The dreams that followed were believed to carry the voices of gods. To dream in a holy place was to hear divinity more clearly. For the pharaoh, these dream temples reinforced his authority. His dreams were considered different from those of ordinary people. If a farmer dreamed of a crocodile, it might be read as a personal warning. But if a pharaoh dreamed of a crocodile, it could be a message for all of Egypt. His visions held national weight. They could justify building a temple, launching a campaign, or even altering laws. Now picture one such night. The pharaoh lies in his chamber, incense smoke curling into the dark. He drifts into slumber. In his dream, a river floods beyond its banks, sweeping through fields. At dawn, he wakes with unease. A scribe records every word. The dream priest consults his scrolls. The river that rises beyond its course, he explains, is the Nile. The gods warn of excess. We must prepare for an unusual flood. Such an interpretation could lead to the construction of new granaries or to the issuing of warnings to provincial governors. In this way, dreams guided practical action. The Egyptians also believed that gods themselves could visit in dreams. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, was said to reveal knowledge through visions. Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war, might send a dream of fire to warn of rebellion. Even Osiris, Lord of the Dead, could appear, reminding dreamers of the fragility of life. When such dreams were recorded, they were often treated with reverence, preserved in temple archives, and consulted for years afterward. Not every dream was welcome. Nightmares were feared as breaches in protection. A dream of falling into darkness or of being chased by serpents was not simply unpleasant. It was a warning that malevolent spirits had attempted to harm the sleeper. To counter this, priests prescribed rituals. Amulets might be worn more closely, spells recited more carefully, herbs burned at the bedside to drive away shadows. The dream world was also a space for healing. In certain temples, those suffering from illness would lie down, hoping for a dream in which a god touched or instructed them. A vision of the falcon Horus laying his hand upon one's chest could be taken as a promise of recovery. A dream of Isis offering water could signal renewal. Upon waking, the dreamer would report the vision, and priests might prescribe treatments inspired by what the god revealed. In this way, medicine and spirituality intertwined within the chamber of sleep. There were, too, stories of dreams that shaped destiny. One tale tells of a pharaoh who dreamed of a child crowned with the sun disk of Ra. Interpreters warned him that the child, though not yet born, would one day rival his power. The Pharaoh, unsettled, ordered his advisors to keep watch. When the child later grew into a prince of great renown, the dream was remembered as prophecy fulfilled. Whether fact or legend, such accounts reveal how seriously Egyptians regarded the power of visions. We might wonder if dreams were manipulated, if priests ever used interpretation as a political tool. To declare that a pharaoh's dream promised victory could encourage armies to march. To suggest that a dream warned of danger might justify caution or retreat. In this way, the authority of dream interpreters was immense. They were guardians of knowledge, but also potential wielders of influence. Pause now and picture a dream temple at night. Dozens of pilgrims lie on reed mats in a great hall. The air is thick with incense. Priests move silently, their steps soft against the stone. The moonlight filters through narrow windows, casting pale beams on the faces of the sleepers. Somewhere in the shadows, a priest chants softly, guiding the dreamers into deeper slumber. In this quiet, the boundaries of reality seem to blur. A man dreams of his lost wife. A woman dreams of healing waters. A pharaoh dreams of gods. Each vision is sacred. Each one is recorded. Dreams for the Egyptians were more than the wandering of the mind. They were channels of communication, threads tying the mortal world to the divine. To sleep was to risk much, but also to gain insight impossible in waking life. And so, each morning, the reports were gathered, the symbols analyzed, the meanings weighed. A kingdom's course could shift because of what a man saw when his eyes were closed. As this chapter closes, let us remember the weight of those visions. For pharaohs, they were messages from the gods. For priests, they were opportunities to guide the realm. For ordinary Egyptians, they were fragile glimpses of eternity. In dreams, Egypt found prophecy, healing, and warnings. And as the people believed, in dreams, Egypt spoke with the divine. When we think of ancient Egypt, our minds turn quickly to pharaohs, temples, and treasures. Yet the story of sleep is not complete without the millions of ordinary men and women who lived along the Nile. Farmers, artisans, servants, and merchants all carried with them nightly customs and beliefs that, while less elaborate than those of royalty, were no less sacred. In their mud brick homes, beneath reed roofs, and under the vast desert sky, they too prepared for journeys into the world of dreams. The homes of common Egyptians were modest. Most were built of sun-dried mud brick, their walls thick to keep out the heat of day and hold warmth through the cool night. A typical dwelling might have one or two rooms, a hearth for cooking, and a flat roof where family members sometimes slept during the hottest months. In such spaces, beds were rare luxuries. Many lay on woven reed mats spread across the floor, their heads resting on curved wooden or ceramic supports that echoed the pharaoh's grand headrests in miniature. Even with such simple arrangements, the night was treated with reverence. Before sleep, families often performed small rituals of protection. Mothers tied amulets in the shape of scarabs to their children's clothing. Fathers placed figurines of household gods in corners to watch over the family. The lamp flame was lowered, casting a soft glow across mud walls decorated with painted symbols or charms scratched by hand. To the ordinary Egyptian, these gestures were not superstition. They were necessity, defenses against the unseen dangers that prowled in darkness. Amulets played a central role. The scarab beetle, symbol of rebirth, was placed under pillows or sewn into blankets. Small figures of the dwarf god Bez, protector of households, were kept close to bedsides. Bez, with his fierce face and outstretched tongue, was believed to frighten away demons that threatened sleepers. The goddess Taweret, half hippopotamus and half crocodile, was invoked to guard women and children during vulnerable hours of rest. These divine companions stood guard each night, ensuring safe passage into dreams. Imagine a household in Thebes at the close of day. A pot of lentils simmers over the fire. Children play in the fading light. As the stars begin to shine, the family gathers in quiet. A father sprinkles water at the threshold, offering thanks to the Nile. A mother hums a lullaby, her voice soft and steady, invoking the names of Isis and Hathor for protection. The children curl onto mats, clutching small charms. Slowly, the house falls silent, save for the night wind moving across the river. The rituals of the common people were deeply connected to their environment. Farmers rose and slept by the rhythm of the Nile and the sun. When the river flooded, bringing new life to the fields, dreams were said to carry messages of fertility and growth. In times of drought, dreams of dry earth or broken jars were feared as warnings of hunger. For artisans and builders, sleep sometimes brought visions of tools, accidents, or structures collapsing, signs that their daily labors were blessed or threatened by unseen forces. Even the positions in which Egyptians slept carried meaning. To lie on one side, knees drawn close, was thought to protect the heart. To rest on one's back, arms at the sides, was seen as openness to divine visitation. Children often slept close to their mothers, both for warmth and for safety, while older family members might take the roof on summer nights, watching the stars before drifting into slumber. The heavens above, so carefully studied by priests, were also the canopy for countless ordinary sleepers. Sleep was also social. In villages, sound traveled easily through thin walls. Neighbors heard one another's dreams retold in the morning. A farmer might say, "I saw a falcon in my sleep," and his neighbor would nod with recognition, knowing such visions were signs of good fortune. Families shared their dreams not as idle chatter, but as part of the fabric of daily life, weaving private visions into the shared tapestry of belief. Night also brought fear. The darkness of Egypt was profound. Without modern lights, only stars and oil lamps pierced the void. People feared that spirits wandered in this time. Demons of the desert, snakes, and the souls of the restless dead were all imagined as threats. To protect themselves, villagers sometimes painted protective symbols on doors, or left offerings of bread and beer outside to appease wandering spirits. A bad dream could unsettle an entire family, leading to additional prayers, offerings, and careful attention to the coming day. There are stories told in fragments of papyri about villagers who experienced what we might call sleep paralysis. They described being unable to move, feeling a weight upon their chest, and seeing figures looming in the darkness. Priests explained such experiences as spirits attempting to press upon the soul. Remedies included burning incense, reciting protective spells, or wearing stronger amulets. Though terrifying, these episodes only reinforced the belief that sleep was a sacred and dangerous journey. Music and lullabies accompanied the night as well. Mothers sang simple, repetitive songs to their children, invoking gods of protection with each verse. The rhythm of a drum or the gentle shaking of a sistrum was sometimes used in households that could afford instruments. These sounds created comfort, but also echoed the grander rituals of temples, bringing a sense of divine order into humble homes. Let us imagine again. In a small village along the Nile, the day's labor is finished. The fields are quiet. Fishermen tie their boats. In one modest house, a family prepares for rest. The grandmother places a figurine of Bess near the hearth. The children whisper their dreams from the night before, hoping for good signs. The father tells a story of a pharaoh who dreamed of the gods, linking their lives to the grandeur of the kingdom. As the lamps are extinguished, stars wheel overhead. The family sleeps, believing that in dreams they might touch the same mysteries as kings. Though separated from the grandeur of palaces, the sleep of common Egyptians carried equal weight. It reflected their hopes, their fears, and their connection to the divine. In their dreams, they sought healing, guidance, and protection. Their rituals, though modest, were echoes of the same cosmic beliefs that guided pharaohs. The sacred was not reserved for rulers alone. It was present in every household, every amulet, every whispered prayer at nightfall. As we leave the homes of these common people, we carry with us a deeper understanding of Egypt's unity. From the golden chambers of kings to the reed mats of villagers, sleep was treated as sacred. It was both risk and renewal, a daily rehearsal for death and rebirth. In every corner of Egypt, the night carried voices, visions, and secrets. Together, they formed a culture where dreams were never just dreams, but messages written in the language of gods. To the ancient Egyptians, a dream was never simply a fleeting vision. It was a message coded in symbols, a tapestry woven from divine signs, warnings, and promises. These symbols whether seen by a pharaoh or by a farmer, were understood to hold meaning that reached beyond the dreamer. They were omens, carrying the voice of gods and the whisper of destiny. Egyptian priests kept records of these symbols in what modern scholars call dream books. Fragments of such texts survive, written on papyrus in precise hieroglyphs. They listed common dream scenarios and their interpretations. To dream of drinking cool water meant prosperity was near. To see one's reflection in a pool suggested renewal or transformation. To dream of fire was a warning of conflict. These books, part manual and part sacred text, provided a language for interpreting the mysterious world of sleep. The most feared symbols were those of animals. A crocodile appearing in a dream might represent danger, betrayal, or the approach of hidden enemies. A serpent slithering through the dreamscape could mean deceit or illness, but animals could also signify blessings. To dream of a falcon sacred to Horus was to glimpse divine protection. To see a lion was to be reminded of strength and victory. Colors, too, carried power. Dreams of bright green fields promised fertility and growth. Golden light symbolized divine favor. Darkness, by contrast, often brought unease, representing death or the threat of unseen spirits. The Egyptians did not separate dream imagery from waking life. The same colors and forms used in temples and tombs reappeared in the dream world, reinforcing the unity of cosmos, ritual, and vision. Now imagine a pharaoh describing a dream to his priests. "I walked in a field of lotus flowers," he says. The priests lean close. In Egyptian lore, the lotus was a symbol of rebirth, opening each morning to the sun and closing at night. For the ruler, this dream could mean renewed strength, a sign that the gods blessed his reign. The priests record the dream on papyrus, noting the date and context. From this, decisions might follow, offerings prepared for the temple of Ra, or a festival planned to celebrate divine favor. Among common people, dream symbols shaped daily life as well. A farmer who dreamed of broken jars might fear a poor harvest, preparing his family for scarcity. A mother who dreamed of her child drowning in the Nile might take it as a warning, keeping the child away from the riverbanks. Dreams became both personal and communal, stories told in the morning that influenced choices throughout the day. Not all symbols were simple. Some dreams carried layered meanings that required the wisdom of priests to decode. A dream of the sun disappearing behind clouds might suggest loss, but also the possibility of renewal, for the sun always returned. Dreams of journeys through desert landscapes could reflect both hardship and spiritual testing. To misinterpret such visions was dangerous, for one might act against the will of the gods. Nightmares were especially troubling. A dream of falling into darkness was taken as a sign that evil spirits sought to drag the dreamer into the underworld. To see oneself bound in chains suggested spiritual attack or illness. Such dreams demanded action. purification rituals, burning incense, reciting protective spells, and strengthening the defenses of the sleeping chamber. For pharaohs, nightmares were treated with urgency, for they could imply threats to the kingdom itself. Symbols were not limited to objects or creatures. Actions carried weight as well. To dream of eating sweet fruit might mean abundance. To dream of teeth falling out suggested death in the family. To fly above the ground was considered a blessing, a sign that the soul was drawing close to divine realms. Egyptian dream interpreters became skilled at reading these patterns, creating a system of meaning that guided decisions both great and small. Let us pause and step into a dream temple at Abydos. A petitioner lies on a mat, waiting for a vision. That night, he dreams of standing before a great pyramid. The next morning, he reports this to the priests. They interpret, the pyramid is stability. Your foundation will hold strong. The gods promise protection for your family. Such reassurance could transform a person's outlook, giving them confidence to face their challenges. Now, picture another dream, darker in tone. A nobleman dreams of serpents surrounding his bed. When he reports this, the priests declare, the serpents are enemies in your household. Guard your alliances carefully. From such interpretations, lives could be reshaped, friendships broken, and political ties reevaluated. The role of dream symbols extended even into statecraft. If Pharaoh dreamed of a lion, it might be taken as a sign to pursue victory in battle. If he dreamed of rivers overflowing, priests might advise building new storage for grain. These were not superstitions, but guiding principles that shaped policy. Dreams became instruments through which rulers justified their decisions, and people accepted these choices as divinely sanctioned. Stories survive of pharaohs who relied heavily on dream omens. One tale tells of Thutmose IV, who dreamed of the Sphinx promising him kingship if he cleared the sand around its body. Inspired, he obeyed, and later claimed the throne, his reign legitimized by the vision. Whether legend or truth, the tale reflects the deep connection between symbols seen in sleep and the authority of rulers. For ordinary Egyptians, dreams also provided comfort. To dream of a deceased loved one smiling was to believe they were safe in the afterlife. To dream of a feast was to anticipate abundance. Even simple dreams of walking in sunlight were welcomed as blessings. These visions connected people to ancestors, gods, and the cycles of nature, making the night as meaningful as the day. In fictional vignettes, we can imagine a farmer describing his dream at sunrise. I saw a falcon soaring above the fields, he says to his wife. She smiles, knowing this means protection and strength. Encouraged, they work with renewed hope. Elsewhere, a merchant wakes troubled after dreaming of broken boats. He consults a priest who warns him against traveling that season. He delays his journey only to later hear of storms that wrecked ships on the Nile. Such stories, passed from mouth to mouth, reinforced belief in the power of dreams. Symbols and omens were more than personal guides. They were the threads tying Egypt together, weaving individual visions into a collective understanding of the divine order. Through dreams, the people of the Nile sought to align themselves with cosmic harmony, reading signs in the night as carefully as priests read stars in the sky. And so, as we leave this chapter, remember that for the Egyptians, the world of sleep was never random. Every image, every sound, every vision was charged with meaning. Dreams were not accidents of the mind, but deliberate messages, written in symbols and delivered by the gods. To ignore them was folly. To embrace them was wisdom. In the dark hours of the night, Egypt listened and believed. For the Egyptians, sleep was not only a time of rest, but a nightly voyage into realms filled with danger and wonder. They believed that the soul, or Ba, left the body during slumber and traveled through landscapes similar to the underworld. This journey mirrored the path of the sun god Ra, who each night descended into the Duat, the realm of the dead, to battle chaos and emerge reborn at dawn. Just as Ra confronted enemies in the darkness, so too did every sleeper face trials beyond the reach of waking eyes. Pharaohs, nobles, and commoners alike shared in this vision. To close one's eyes was to risk the possibility of the soul wandering too far, of losing its way, or of being ensnared by malevolent forces. Protection was essential. Rituals prepared the body, charms guarded the chamber, and incantations guided the spirit. Yet even with these defenses, the night remained perilous. To sleep was to fight battles unseen, in texts carved on tomb walls and written in papyri. We see glimpses of these beliefs. They speak of serpents that lurked in darkness, of demons who attempted to strangle the soul, and of treacherous waters that threatened to sweep travelers away. These trials were not imagined as symbolic alone. For the Egyptians, they were realities of the dream realm, obstacles to be overcome if one was to return safely to the body at dawn. The Pharaoh's nightly journey carried particular weight. Just as Ra ensured the rising of the sun, the ruler's safe passage through sleep was believed to sustain the order of the kingdom. If his soul faltered, chaos might seep into the waking world. Priests therefore took great care in preparing protective rites before he closed his eyes. They whispered verses from the coffin texts and the Book of the Dead, invoking the gods who guided souls in darkness. These words, spoken softly in the lamplight, became weapons for the Pharaoh to wield in dreams. Imagine such a dream. A Pharaoh drifts into slumber, his breath steady, his body still. Yet in his vision he walks through a corridor of stone, its walls alive with shifting shadows. From the darkness rises Apophis, the great serpent of chaos, jaws wide and eyes burning. The Pharaoh calls upon Ra, upon Horus, upon the guardians invoked by his priests. In the dream, he raises a spear of light, striking at the serpent. The battle is fierce, but victory is assured, for the order of Egypt must not fail. At dawn, he wakes, his survival not only personal but cosmic, proof that harmony has been preserved. These nightly battles were not reserved for kings alone. Common Egyptians, too, believed their souls faced trials in the duat during sleep. A farmer might dream of being pursued by animals, interpreting it as an attack by spirits. A mother might see herself crossing a river filled with crocodiles, fearing for her safety and that of her family. Such visions were reminders that sleep was a threshold, a crossing into danger from which one returned only with the help of divine protection. Nightmares in particular were feared as evidence of the soul's struggles. To dream of falling, of suffocating, or of being bound was to sense that evil had drawn near. Remedies were prescribed, stronger amulets, fresh incantations, or sleeping closer to protective idols. Some families placed bowls of water near beds, believing the surface reflected harmful spirits back into the night. Others burned herbs, their smoke rising as a shield around sleepers. These practices transformed homes into battlegrounds, prepared for invisible war. The gods themselves were imagined as companions or adversaries in dreams. Horus, the falcon, might soar beside the dreamer, warding off enemies. Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of souls, could appear to lead one safely through shadowed paths. Isis, mother and protector, was called upon to shield children in their sleep. Yet, not all divine encounters were comforting. Sekhmet, fierce goddess of fire, might appear in dreams to test the dreamer's strength. To survive such a vision was to prove one's resilience. Temples also reflected these beliefs. Within their walls, rituals were performed not only for the living, but for the sleeping. Priests recited protective hymns at night, aligning their words with the sun's journey through the duat. The temple thus became a mirror of the cosmic struggle. Sleep was sacred because it repeated in miniature the eternal battle between order and chaos. Consider a fictional vignette of an ordinary villager. He lies on his mat, clutching a scarab charm. His breathing slows. In his dream, he finds himself walking through desert sands. The wind howls, and from the dunes rise shadowy figures, their forms shifting like smoke. He runs, calling out to Horus. Suddenly a falcon appears, wings outstretched, scattering the spirits. The villager wakes with a start, heart pounding, convinced that the amulet saved his soul. The story spreads to neighbors the next day, reinforcing the shared belief in nightly battles. Such tales were not idle superstitions. They were woven into Egypt's understanding of life, death, and the afterlife. Just as the deceased faced trials in the duat to reach paradise, so too did the living rehearse these trials each night in dreams. Sleep was a rehearsal for eternity, a daily reminder of the journey all must make after death. To awaken was to be granted rebirth, to rise as the sun rose, renewed and protected. For pharaohs, these beliefs reinforced their divine status. Just as Ra triumphed each night, so too did the ruler triumph in his dreams. His survival symbolized the endurance of order, His visions became omens for the kingdom, and his return to waking life was celebrated as a sign of stability. In this way, the private act of sleep became a matter of state, and the battles of the soul became political as well as spiritual. We can imagine the tension of a palace after a pharaoh reported a troubling dream. Priests would gather, studying its symbols, seeking to reassure him or to recommend new rituals. Soldiers might be told to prepare for unrest, farmers warned of floods, or governors instructed to strengthen defenses. A single dream, born from a nightly battle of the soul, could ripple outward into the decisions of an empire. As the chapter draws to its close, reflect on the weight of these beliefs. To the Egyptians, sleep was never trivial. It was a struggle fought in silence, an unseen combat between forces of order and chaos. Every night the soul ventured into the unknown, armed with charms, guided by prayers, accompanied by gods. Every morning it returned, weary yet triumphant, proof that life could continue. The nightly battles of the soul remind us that, for ancient Egypt, the boundaries between waking and dreaming, life and death, human and divine, were porous. The pharaoh's chamber and the farmer's hut alike became arenas of cosmic conflict. Each dream was a battleground, each awakening a victory. In the hush of night, as stars gleamed over the desert, Egypt fought these battles together, believing that the dawn would bring renewal once more. The grandeur of Pharaoh's chamber is often described in gold and stone. Yet behind this splendor stood human figures whose presence was quiet, watchful, and filled with unease. These were the servants of the palace, the men and women whose duty was to remain close to their sovereign, even in the most vulnerable of moments. When Pharaoh slept, they too kept vigil, moving silently in shadow, whispering their hopes and their fears. Their roles were practical, yet also spiritual. They lit the lamps, carried bowls of incense, arranged the linen robes, and positioned protective charms around the bed. Yet, once the pharaoh had closed his eyes, their tasks became more delicate. They had to maintain stillness, guarding the chamber from intrusion, listening for the faintest sign of disturbance. Every movement, every whisper carried weight, for superstition taught that the king's slumber was no ordinary rest. It was said that to wake a pharaoh too suddenly risked disaster. His soul, believed to wander through the Duat in dreams, might not yet have returned. To call him back too abruptly could trap his spirit outside the body, leaving him vulnerable or even lifeless. This fear lingered in the hearts of the attendants. They moved with exaggerated care, never raising their voices, never stepping too close, never daring to touch the king unless summoned. Imagine such a night. The chamber is heavy with the scent of myrrh. The golden bed glimmers faintly in lamplight. Beyond its veil, The Pharaoh lies still, his breathing slow, his body resting. In the corners of the room, servants sit or kneel, their eyes fixed on the ruler. One adjusts a lamp wick with careful fingers, afraid of making sound. Another clutches a small amulet hidden beneath his robe, whispering a prayer into the folds of cloth. They wait, hour after hour, in silence, broken only by the occasional hiss of burning oil. Whispers filled the nights of these servants. They spoke softly of the dangers their master might face in his dreams. Some murmured prayers to Horus, asking the falcon god to shield the pharaoh's soul. Others invoked Anubis, guide of the dead, pleading that he watch over the royal spirit until it returned with dawn. At times, their words slipped into personal pleas, a prayer for their own safety, for the protection of their families, for relief from the burden of keeping vigil beside a being both human and divine. The superstition of never waking a pharaoh suddenly shaped the servants' every decision. If the king stirred restlessly, they froze, fearing that a careless action might sever the fragile link between body and soul. If he groaned in sleep, they whispered urgently among themselves, wondering if demons of the night had drawn near. They longed for morning, when light would signal that his soul had safely returned and their watch was complete. Fictional accounts bring us closer still. Picture an attendant, young and weary, fighting sleep in the dim hours before dawn. His head nods, but a fellow servant nudges him awake, shaking his head sternly. Do not drift. If something stirs and we fail to act, it will be upon us. The young man blinks, clutching his amulet tighter. He listens to the faint breath of Pharaoh and resumes his silent vigil, heart heavy with both duty and fear. These whispered nights created a bond among the attendants. They shared stories in hushed tones, recalling omens from dreams of their own. One might confess he dreamed of serpents in the corridors. Another that he saw the bed surrounded by shadows. They comforted one another with murmured reassurances. The gods watch with us. The gods will not let harm come. Their voices never rose above a murmur, for the stillness of the chamber demanded reverence. The servants lived in two worlds. By day, they were workers, fetching, carrying, obeying orders. By night, they became guardians of mysteries they did not fully understand. They could not enter the Pharaoh's dreams, yet they feared for him as if the battles of his soul were their own. To guard the sleeping king was to stand at the edge of the divine, protecting a life believed essential to the order of the cosmos. Whispered prayers were their only defense. A few words repeated into the stillness, a plea that the Pharaoh's soul find its way back. These murmurs, fragile and fleeting, carried the weight of responsibility. In the minds of these humble attendants, their voices might tip the balance between safety and disaster. Let us linger in the image. The chamber is quiet. Pharaoh breathes softly, caught in dreams. Around him, figures kneel in shadow. Their heads bow low. Their lips move with barely audible words. Silence fills the room, broken only by the whispered rhythm of prayers. Time stretches, hours pass, dawn approaches. At last, a shaft of light slips through a narrow window. Touching the golden bed, the attendants exhale in relief. The Pharaoh stirs, opens his eyes, and rises. His soul has returned. Their vigil is complete. For these servants, sleep was not a time of rest. It was a test of patience, devotion, and quiet courage. They bore the weight of superstition, the burden of silence, the fear of unseen dangers. Their whispered secrets, preserved only in imagination, remind us of the unseen figures who stood watch over Egypt's greatest rulers. In their prayers and in their whispers, we glimpse the fragile humanity behind the grandeur of the Pharaoh's chamber. When the lamps were dimmed and the incense burned low, another form of protection began to fill the Pharaoh's chamber. Music. To the ancient Egyptians, music was not mere entertainment. It was magic, a force that soothed the spirit, calmed the heart, and guided the soul safely into the realm of dreams. Just as words of power guarded the sleeper, so too did tones and rhythms. In the stillness of night, music became both shield and companion. The instruments of Egypt were simple, yet powerful. The harp, tall and curved, produced gentle notes that rose like waves, each vibration thought to carry blessings. The sistrum, a rattle shaped with a loop of bronze and rods strung with jingling discs, was shaken in slow rhythm, its sound believed to drive away evil spirits. Flutes carved from reeds sent soft, breathy tones into the air, imitating the whisper of wind through papyrus fields. Even drums, tapped lightly, offered a steady heartbeat, grounding the chamber in calm. For pharaohs and nobles, music was a nightly presence. Attendants trained in song and instrument stood at the edges of the chamber, playing softly as the ruler lay down. The harp's notes swelled and faded. The sistrum shook gently, its metallic whisper steady and protective. Singers lifted their voices in lullabies, words chosen with care, repeating verses that invoked gods and promised safety. The effect was more than ritual. It was a sensory atmosphere that eased the body, stilled the mind, and prepared the soul for its journey. Even among common people, music wove itself into bedtime rituals. Mothers sang to their children simple tunes with repeating phrases, invoking the gods Bes and Taweret for protection. Fathers hummed low melodies, steady and grounding, like the flow of the Nile. These songs, passed through generations, carried comfort as much as meaning. They transformed the silence of night into a space of warmth and safety. One such lullaby survives in fragmentary translation, its words echoing across millennia. Sleep, child, sleep in peace. The god Bez stands at the door. He drives away the darkness. He banishes the serpent. He guards you until morning light. Imagine the voice of a mother in a mud brick house, singing these words as her child drifts into slumber. The fire crackles low. A clay jar cools water nearby. Her voice repeats, soft and steady, until the child's breathing slows. The rhythm itself becomes protective. The repetition reassures both mother and child that the gods are listening. Music's power lay in its repetition. Just as waves lap against the shore, the same notes, the same words, returned again and again, creating a rhythm that calmed the heart. This repetition mirrored the cycles of nature that Egyptians saw everywhere. The flooding of the Nile, the rising and setting of the sun, the turning of stars. Music aligned human breath with cosmic order, drawing the sleeper into harmony with the world. In the palace, lullabies were more elaborate, but no less soothing. Priests might compose verses filled with imagery of the gods. Harpists plucked strings that echoed through the golden chamber. Imagine Pharaoh lying on his bed, eyes heavy, while attendants sing softly, "May Ra guard your breath. May Horus shield your path. May Isis wrap you in light until the morning sun returns." The words flow like a prayer, yet they are sung, their tones lingering in the air. The pharaoh exhales, his mind surrendering to calm. Around him, servants whisper, music continuing in gentle waves. The repetition is endless, designed not to rouse but to lull, to carry the spirit forward without disturbance. Even the act of breathing was tied to rhythm. Singers and priests encouraged deep, slow inhalations as they performed, their voices rising and falling like tides. Listeners unconsciously followed. Breaths slowed, shoulders relaxed, the body mirrored the song. In this way, music became not only sound, but medicine, preparing both flesh and soul for the battles of the night. Fictional scenes bring this to life. Picture a noble household where children lie on mats while an elder strums a small harp. The melody repeats, soft and circular. A sister shakes a sistrum, its metallic whisper steady. Together, the family breathes in rhythm with the music. One by one, they drift into sleep, their dreams accompanied by tones that carry them into silence. The belief in music's power extended even into tombs. Carvings show musicians playing before gods, offering song as sacrifice. Inscriptions describe music as a gift that pleased the divine and ensured safe passage into eternity. If it could protect the dead on their eternal journey, then surely it could protect the living through the fragile hours of sleep. As we linger in this chapter, let us mirror what they felt. Imagine the sound of a harp, each note rising and fading, slow and deliberate. Picture the gentle shake of a sistrum, its rhythm constant, steady, protective. Hear the soft chant of voices repeating, "Rest and be safe, rest and be safe, rest and be safe." Each phrase falls like a breath, repeated until the body yields. Even now, across centuries, the magic of rhythm remains. Modern listeners know the comfort of repeated sounds, of steady patterns that lull the mind. Ancient Egyptians harnessed this truth in their own way, crafting nights where music was shield, prayer, and guide. And so, as this chapter closes, take a moment to breathe with them. Inhale slowly, as if drawing in the notes of a harp. Exhale gently, as if releasing them into the night. Let the rhythm settle your own thoughts, as it once settled pharaohs, nobles, and children by the Nile. For in music they found safety, and in music they found sleep. Not all rituals of sleep in ancient Egypt were gentle. Beneath the accepted customs, behind the temple walls, there were practices spoken of only in whispers. These were the forbidden rites reserved for pharaohs and a select few priests, ceremonies that sought to open the deepest gates of the dream world. The purpose was not simple rest. It was contact with gods, with ancestors, with truths too powerful for ordinary mortals. Central to these rites were substances both natural and mystical. Among them was the blue lotus, a flower whose delicate petals floated on the Nile. When brewed into drink or burned as incense, it was believed to loosen the spirit from the body, guiding the sleeper more swiftly into visions. Its fragrance, sweet and intoxicating, carried with it the promise of vivid dreams. Archaeological remains of blue lotus petals found in tombs suggest that it was valued not only for beauty, but for its hidden power. Other mixtures prepared by skilled temple attendants combined herbs and resins. Some sources hint at the use of opium drawn from imported poppies to dull the body and free the mind. Mandrake roots, shaped like human figures, were steeped into potions. Myrrh and frankincense thickened the air, their smoke both sacred and disorienting. These substances were not offered lightly. They were measured carefully, whispered over, and given only to those deemed worthy. The priests who guarded these secrets believed that such practices opened the true dream gates. Ordinary dreams, they taught, were like shadows on a wall. But with these rites, one could step through the shadow and enter the realm itself. There, the gods might be seen face to face, their voices heard clearly. There, visions could shape destiny. reveal hidden truths, and alter the course of the kingdom. Yet, with this power came danger. To wander too far risked never returning. To see too much risked madness. Imagine a forbidden night in the palace. The Pharaoh prepares, not with simple amulets and lullabies, but with potent mixtures brewed by his priests. He drinks a dark liquid that tastes of earth and resin. The chamber fills with the heavy smoke of burning lotus. Attendants withdraw, leaving only the closest priests, their faces lit by flickering lamps. The Pharaoh reclines, his body sinking into stillness. Soon, his breathing slows, his eyelids flutter, his soul begins to rise. In his dream, he finds himself standing at the gates of a temple that glows with unearthly light. Figures approach, Thoth with the head of an ibis, holding a scroll, Isis radiant, her wings stretching wide, Osiris upon his throne, crowned with the white crown of eternity. They speak not in words, but in images, a river flooding, a falcon soaring, a serpent coiling. Each vision is a message, each symbol a command. The Pharaoh listens, trembling, knowing these truths are not meant for all eyes. He bows, receives the visions, and then feels himself pulled back into his body, back into the chamber, heavy with smoke. He wakes, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, carrying knowledge too dangerous to share. These rituals were forbidden for good reason. Common people were warned against them. To use such mixtures without guidance was to invite spirits unprepared. To seek gods without proper ritual was to risk angering them. Some whispered that reckless dreamers lost their minds, wandering in waking life as if still trapped in visions. Others believed that too much exposure to these practices shortened life, burning the spirit too quickly, like a lamp with too much oil. The priests controlled access with care. They decided who might drink, who might inhale, who might attempt to walk through the dream gates. Pharaohs were permitted, for their visions served the kingdom. High priests might be chosen to guide or to confirm, but the majority of people were kept at a distance. For them, ordinary dreams were enough. Protection, not vision, was their nightly goal. Stories passed in whispers about rulers who became addicted to these rites. They sought the gods each night, desperate for visions, unable to face the silence of ordinary sleep. Their bodies weakened, their spirits thinned, and their reins faltered. Whether true or exaggerated, such tales served as warnings. The dream gates were not toys. They were thresholds, and thresholds were dangerous. And yet, the allure remained, to glimpse eternity, to hear the gods, to know secrets hidden from the waking world. How could one resist? Even today, fragments of texts hint at instructions too complex for us to decode, mixtures too secret to replicate. The mysteries remain locked in stone and papyrus, guarded by time itself. As listeners, we can imagine the tension of those nights, the thick smoke curling upward, the silence pressing heavily, the pharaoh lying motionless, his soul far away, priests kneeling, whispering prayers, terrified of what he might see, terrified of what might return with him. Minutes pass like hours, hours pass like ages. Then, at last, the pharaoh stirs, his eyes open. He whispers of visions too sacred to repeat. The priests bow low, relieved that his spirit has returned. The climax of these rites was always followed by stillness. The intensity gave way to calm. The music softened. Lamps burned low. Attendants exhaled in relief. For though the night had been filled with peril, the dawn was near. Light would return. Order would be restored. The forbidden journey had ended, and the soul had survived. The rituals of Egyptian sleep did not vanish when dynasties fell. They echoed outward, carried by travelers, absorbed by neighboring cultures, and reshaped by the hands of time. Across centuries, fragments of these ancient practices found new life, influencing Greek philosophers, Roman priests, and even the quiet routines of medieval monasteries. What began in golden chambers by the Nile rippled across the world, leaving traces we still recognize today. Among the Greeks, the idea of sleep as a bridge to the divine blossomed into the practice of dream incubation. At temples dedicated to Asclepius, god of healing, pilgrims came not to offer sacrifices alone, but to sleep. They lay on mats within sacred halls, hoping that in the silence of night, Asclepius would appear in a dream and prescribe a cure. The roots of this practice lay in Egyptian dream temples like those at Abydos, where worshippers sought visions from Thoth or Osiris. The Greeks refined the ritual, but the belief remained the same, that sleep carried messages from beyond. The Romans inherited both Egyptian and Greek traditions. They too saw dreams as omens, consulting interpreters before making decisions of war or governance. Roman generals recorded their visions, seeking patterns and meaning. The poet Cicero wrote of dreams as voices of the soul, and emperors claimed divine instruction delivered in sleep. Roman homes sometimes included small shrines where protective figures watched over the family at night, a continuation of Egyptian amulets placed in humble houses centuries earlier. As Christianity spread across Europe, echoes of these older practices found new expression in monastic life. Monks rose and slept by the rhythm of bells, a cycle of order that mirrored Egyptian concern with cosmic balance. Night vigils, where prayers were whispered in the stillness, reflected the same belief that the hours of darkness were fraught with spiritual significance. The idea of the soul wandering at night, vulnerable to attack, lived on in medieval fears of demons and nightmare. To this day, the phrase night terrors recalls ancient beliefs in spirits pressing upon the sleeping body. Even now, traces remain. We may not burn lotus petals or place scarab amulets at our doors, yet we speak of dreams as meaningful, as signs of inner truth. Modern science, with its language of circadian rhythms, melatonin, and rapid eye movement, explains the mechanisms of sleep. It tells us how light resets our clocks, how hormones rise and fall, how brain waves shift from wakefulness to dreaming. Yet the mystery persists. Dreams still puzzle us. Their symbols still carry weight. Their images still shape our days. In some ways, the Egyptians anticipated truths science later confirmed. They knew that rhythm-guided rest, aligning themselves with the cycles of sun and Nile. They understood that ritual soothed the mind, creating conditions for deeper sleep. They recognized that what happens in dreams can influence waking life. Though their explanations invoked gods and spirits, their observations were precise. Their wisdom, clothed in myth, continues to resonate. And so, the forbidden secrets of Egyptian sleep have not vanished. They live on in the songs we hum to children, in the candles lit before bed, in the quiet prayers whispered in darkness. They survive in the scientific quest to decode dreams, in the fascination with lucid visions, in the rituals of bedtime that shape our nights. The Pharaoh's chamber, the villager's mat, the monk's cell, and the modern bedroom are all connected by the same truth. Sleep is both necessity and mystery. As this final chapter closes, reflect on how far these echoes have traveled. From the Nile to Athens, from Rome to cloisters, from temples to laboratories, humanity has never ceased to treat sleep as sacred. The forms have changed, but the essence remains. To close the eyes is to cross a threshold. To dream is to glimpse something beyond. And to awaken is to be reborn into the light of day.